Great. I think we are ready to go. Hello, everybody, and happy Independent Bookshop Week. It is my very great pleasure to welcome you to Reading Women. This is our first virtual author event in partnership with the Women's Prize for Fiction, Five Leaves Bookshop, and Iowa City, our fellow UNESCO City of Literature. My name is Sandeep Mahal, and I'm one of the trustees of the Women's Prize Trust, and I have the joyous role of heading up Nottingham's prestigious designation as the UNESCO City of Literature. We share this title with only 38 other cities of the world, the likes of Barcelona, Dublin, Dunedin, Durban, Manchester, and Seattle. And we are especially delighted to be partnering with Iowa City, named a UNESCO City of Literature in 2008. It was the first in the United States and the third in the world to be designated. It earned this title in large part because Iowa City is the place people go when they want to learn to write. And it's a city that has produced over 40 Pulitzer Prize winners. Now, Nottingham's mission as a UNESCO City of Literature is to build a better world with words. And our vision is for a city where everyone is reading and writing their way to a better life. For a city that is ranked 11th most deprived in the area for low levels of literacy, we believe reading and writing are two of the most powerful weapons we have for lifting children and young people out of poverty and inequality. Now, Nottingham is also a city that champions social justice, that embraces and encourages difference, that looks out onto the world and engages with the global community. It's home to disruptive thinkers Ada Lovelace, Florence Boot, Stella Rimington, Paris Lees, and the Downey sisters. Nottingham promotes openness and a great welcome. So welcome. The wonderful power of technology has brought us together with three amazing writers. Please do jump into the chat room and let us know who you are and where you are listening in from. And if you have a question for any of our guests, please post your question in the Q&A room that you can see along the bottom of your screen, and we'll pick up those questions during the Q&A session. Now, we're really excited to be celebrating Independent Bookshop Week, and we have Pippa Hennessy here from Five Leaves Bookshop, who can answer any of your book-related questions in the chat room. And do make the most of their exclusive 3 for 2 offer on all books by our guest authors and all past winners of the Women's Prize for Fiction. Now, that's an offer you really don't want to miss. And before I introduce our host for this evening, I'll be announcing an exciting giveaway at the end of this event to a lucky random participant, so definitely stick with us through to the end. And now I'm very, very honoured to introduce international best-selling novelist and playwright and founder of the Women's Prize for Fiction, Kate Mosse. Kate is the author of 8 novels and short story collections, including the #1 multi-million selling Languedoc trilogy and gothic fiction The Winter Ghost and The Taxidermist's Daughter, which she is adapting for the stage. Her books have been translated into 38 languages and published in more than 40 countries. The second novel in her The Burning Chambers series, The City of Tears, will be published in January 2021. Thank you so much, Kate, for thinking of Nottingham to do this Reading Women event. It has been such a pleasure to know you as a writer, as a feminist, as an activist, and as a person who stands up for women's voices. So over to Kate to introduce our guests and to explain how this event is going to work.
Right. Thank you, Sandy. Wonderful to be here. Fantastic. I'm going to wave at Anne in Nashville and Tayari in Atlanta. And I'm sitting in what is a heat wave in Sussex in England. So this is an extraordinary moment, I think, bringing us all together. This is the 25th year of the Women's Prize for Fiction. I was much taller when it started. It's been a long, long road, but it's a brilliant moment to celebrate. What we're doing at the moment with Reading Women is going back to some of the extraordinary novels that have won the Women's Prize for Fiction over the past 24 years. And we're incredibly honoured to have our 2002 winner, Anne Patchett, and also our current reigning winner, Tayari Jones, who will have the distinction of being the longest ever holder of this prize, because we normally announce in June, and this year, because of COVID and the lockdown, we're not announcing until September. one of the judges this year attended the very first Women's Prize for Fiction when I got up onto the stage and explained that the Women's Prize had been founded to honor and to celebrate women's voices. Beautiful, amazing, inspiring, imaginative work from all over the world. Language, English, but wherever you lived, wherever you were born, whatever you looked like, whatever your background, however you defined, you were welcome in the Women's Prize for Fiction. And that judge attended that party in her mother's stomach and was born about 3 days later. And so I know. And so the point about the Reading Women campaign is to make sure that the brilliant books that are part of the library of the Women's Prize, the classics of tomorrow in the hands of the readers of today, are being reintroduced to young women and men, of course, anybody who wants to read. So what we're going to do, guys, is just like if we were in the same shared space. I'm going to talk first to Anne Patchett about her prize-winning novel, Bel Canto, 2002. Then I'm going to talk to Tayari Jones about her prize-winning novel, An American Marriage, 2019. And then we're going to have a bit of a chat together, and then it will be your turn. And Sandy's going to manage all the questions for me, and we just have a bit of a chat. So just pretend that we're having 3 women talking together, and you are eavesdropping on us. So that's how it's going to go. So Anne and Tayari, welcome. And before we start, you can see Anne has got her Bessie, which is the statue that every winner wins. And Tayari has got hers. And it's the spirit of the Women's Prize that a sculptor, Grizel Niven, donated the cast to make a Bessie so that every woman would have her own award each year. And she was in her 80s when she did that. And the prize is anonymously endowed, and that woman was in her 90s. Both of those amazing women have passed on now, but without the support of an older generation of women, I would never have got the prize off the ground. So, and I've got a copy, cheap Bessie. So here's the Bessie, and anybody who comes up with a good collective noun for Bessies will get some sort of prize. So, Anne, I'm going to start with you. It's so lovely to see you. Bel Canto won in 2002. It's an extraordinary novel about love, about loss, about language, about opera, and it's set at a very, very highly charged moment in a piece of history. So could you just tell us a little bit about Bel Canto and a little bit about the inspiration behind the novel?
So Bel Canto was published in 2001, which means the last time I read it was in 2000. Yes, that's the way it goes.
Yeah, that's right.
You never read your own books again. And I always have this moment where I feel like, what was that about? But it was very, very loosely inspired. I can't even say based on the 1995 takeover of the Japanese embassy in Lima, Peru by a group of teenage guerrillas who were trying to raise awareness for prison reform in Peru. And I got very caught up in the news story and decided to write a book about it. There was no opera singer. Everything was false. All I knew was what I read in the newspaper. But that's how it all got started. And it was the worst idea in the world for a novel. I remember telling my editor when I was just starting it, he said, "What are you going to do next?" And I said, "I'm going to write a book about opera and terrorism in Peru." And he patted my hand. We were in a diner. He was about 110 years old. And he said, "Best keep that under our hats."
Well, it was your 4th novel, so you'd already got, a sort of a track record, as it were. But
yes, and in fact, I was shortlisted for back then the Orange Prize in 98.
You were 98, yeah, and of course longlisted last year as well. I mean, you are a regular feature on our list, indeed. Yeah.
Thank you.
obviously. But so when you have an idea that seems so extraordinary, the idea of putting an opera singer in the middle of a terrorist moment, that's an idea. So what is it that takes it from an idea that your editor's going, let's keep it, under your hat, to a story? Where do the characters come from, and how do you start to sort of weave the magic that makes a novel as opposed to a piece of nonfiction about the same thing?
I'm somebody who really does most of my work in my head, and I will think about a book for a long time, a year or two or three, and I have some basic idea. Okay, in this terrorist act, they let all of the women go. What if they kept one woman? Okay, who is that woman? What would she do? Why was she invited to the party? And I really went through a long list. I have to say, in retrospect, I feel a little ashamed of myself that the one woman that they kept was the entertainment. I feel like, right, it should have been Angela Merkel or something, somebody more important. I'm so glad that I decided that my dog would be good and could stay here in the room with
my dog is outside the door, and I can hear him scratching, but he's not coming in. He's a boy dog. He's a boy dog. Anne, do you have a reading that you can share with us, just to give people the flavour of the language and the way that the novel sort of weaves itself together?
I am going to just read the very, very beginning from the large print Bel Canto with my glasses on. Okay, here we go. When the lights went off, the accompanist kissed her. Maybe he had been turning towards her just before it was completely dark. Maybe he was lifting his hands. There must have been some movement, a gesture, because every person in the living room would later remember a kiss. They did not see a kiss. That would have been impossible. The darkness that came on them was startling and complete. Not only was everyone there certain of a kiss, they claimed they could identify a type of kiss. It was strong and passionate, and it took her by surprise. They were all looking right at her when the lights went out. They were still applauding, each on his or her feet, still in the fullest throes of hands slapping together, elbows up. Not one person was anywhere close to tiring. The Italians and the French were yelling brava, brava, and the Japanese turned away from them. What would it have been like had the room been lit? Was his mind so full of her that in the very instant of darkness he reached for her? Did he think so quickly? Or was it that they all wanted her too, all of the men and women in the room, and so they imagined it collectively? They were so taken by the beauty of her voice that they wanted to cover her mouth with their mouth, drink in. Maybe music could be transferred, devoured, owned. What would it mean to kiss the lips that had held such a sound?
Beautiful.
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 I haven't read that in a really long time.
No, I know. And it's that terrible moment, which Tayari will know as well, when people come up to you and say, just that bit in chapter 7 when they do this, and you think, I can't remember that character, let alone chapter 7. Yeah.
Or people will ask me about my first novel, which I published in 1992. And I haven't read since 1991, and say, why did X happen? And I always say, this is a perfect example of why the reader must enter into the narrative, because after a while, one earring just fell off. I'm going to take the other one off now. No more trying to impress you people, because the author doesn't remember. It's up to the reader.
No, because you move on. But obviously staying with Bel Canto for now, to celebrate as part of Reading Women campaign, there are just a few things that I've always wanted to ask you about. So the first one is that there is this incredibly skillful and clever, omniscient third-person narrator, which is a kind of a really challenging way to tell a story. Now, is that a decision that you made, that you knew you wanted to tell the novel in that way so that you could kind of float over everything? Or did you try it with one of the characters, Cross or Hokusawa or Jen or Carmen, and then decide that actually you needed to be able to give them all equal space?
My goal as a writer was to write an omniscient third-person narrative. I tried it in my first book and failed. My second book failed. My third book failed. And this was the book in which I figured it out. But in every book, I went into it thinking I'm writing an omniscient third person. And I feel like that was the thing I had been in training for my whole career. So yes, it was a very, very deliberate decision, and really the thing that I am most proud of. So thank you for noticing.
And what was it then? Can you think, looking back, what was it that made it work this time for Bel Canto?
Oh, it was my own skill. It would have
Right.
worked beautifully. If I could go back and rewrite those first 3 novels, they would work really well with an omniscient narrator as well. I just couldn't figure out how to do it, because it's all about keeping the tension even, so that when someone is reading, they're not more interested in one point of view than another. If you can't keep the tension right in omniscience, what happens is that somebody hits a character's point of view they're not so interested in, so they skim, then they get to the character, they want their point of view, and they read slowly. That's the trick of it.
Yeah, and with the sort of the 2 love stories at the heart of it, I'm obviously being very careful not to give anything away to everybody who might yet, have to have read it. But did you have an idea that there needed to be the dual love stories because of the tenderness of the terrorist and what their goals are, the translator, what their goals are, the sort of the diplomats, all the different kind of people in that? Did you want there to be a dual love story?
Yes, and at the risk of sounding extremely highfalutin, it was Shakespearean to me to have the 2 pairs of lovers who cross, and from the beginning, that was always my intention.
And when you, I'm naughtily asking this with a novelist hat on at the moment, is when you have such a clear idea of certain things you want to achieve in terms of skill, your own writing skill, how long do you give an idea a chance to work before you decide it's not going to work? So within this structure, it is so beautifully put together, this novel. It's so hard to see any of the joins, if you like. It's like a perfect Chinese box, like your wonderful screen behind you. But if you run into, as a writer in any of your novels, into an idea that maybe this isn't going to quite deliver the story you want to, how do you adjust your aim for the novel? Does that ever happen to you? I mean, you've said it with the 3rd-person narrator, but in other terms.
It certainly happens all the time, and I think that the trick is to love your work more than you love yourself, more than you love your own ego. Bel Canto had a very long prologue that was in first person, told by Gen, who is the translator in the book. And he begins it saying, "This is the story of how I met my wife." And I worked on that intro for as long as I worked on the rest of the novel.
Right.
And when I was finished, my friend Elizabeth McCracken said, "Now you throw the prologue away. That was your safety net. That's your saying, oh, this looks like omniscient, but it really isn't, because you're covering your tracks." And I was devastated because I had worked so hard. But when somebody tells you the truth, listen. That's the thing. And as I have gotten older, I've gotten better at telling myself the truth. When I finished writing The Dutch House, which was my last novel, I finished the entire book and read it and realized I had made a hideous mistake. At about page 30, I had gone left when I should have gone right. And I threw the whole thing away and deleted all the files, and no one read it. And I feel so good about that, because I would feel terrible if anyone had read that book. It was so bad. I made such a huge mistake. And what a gift to be able to throw something away and start over again.
And to have the courage to do that. And so you have won many, many awards, including the Penn Faulkner Award and obviously the Women's Prize. You're translated into more than 30 languages. You were named as one of the 100 most influential people in the world by Time magazine. And you're also the co-owner of an independent bookshop, Parnassus Books in Nashville. But all of that, we're here celebrating you as a novelist, this actual novelist today. Bel Canto, there was quite a lot of attempts to put it on the stage and film and opera. And then finally, both of those things happened, both the opera and the film. How different did it feel for you to see the beauty of the way that opera runs through everything in the book? It's the unifying language, if you like. People can't speak each other's language, but opera is the language that brings them together. Was that a peculiar experience to actually see it as an opera? And how much did you have to do with it?
I didn't have anything to do with it, not one single thing. I went to the meeting when the group was first put together, and I said to the composer and librettist, if you need me, I'm here for you. And if you need me to never bother you, I will never bother you. And due to a funny string of circumstances, I didn't actually see it until opening night. It was a gorgeous opera. They did such a wonderful job, but I remember as the third act was starting, just feeling sick because I thought, I know what's going to happen and it's all my fault. An experience I had not had before, but that was really, really wonderful. But again, I was so far away from the book and from writing it. I had done so many other things that what I felt was great joy for these people that I admired so much. I had no sense of ownership other than I wished there had been perhaps a happier ending that night. Yeah.
Well, that can be the sequel. The next one, Dutch House now, and then obviously move on to that. And thank you so much. And we'll come back when at the end to talk a few more questions about, more general things about writing and bookselling and Independent Booksellers Week.
And I'm really excited about hearing Tayari, so.
Exactly. So Tayari, hello, we're waving at you. Can you unmute yourself? Yeah. So Tayari also won the Women's Prize for Fiction, as it now is, for her fourth novel, An American Marriage, which won last year. An American Marriage was an Oprah's Book Club selection and on Barack Obama's summer reading list. So these are pretty impressive things, and has won many awards, including the Hurston White Legacy Award, a United States Artist Fellowship, an NEA Fellowship, and a Radcliffe Institute Bunting Fellowship. Now, like Anne, who is the co-owner of an independent bookseller and an amazing novelist, you are a teacher and a professor, as well as being a novelist. But we're going to talk about An American Marriage and come back to all those other things. So one of the things that struck me so much about An American Marriage was the sense all the time that all of the characters, Celestine and Roy, and of course, Andre, at any moment, I felt that they could make a different decision. Like user Anne's phrase could go left when they went right. And I thought that was an absolutely masterful piece of writing, because you need to have that jeopardy, the idea that it's not all sewn up beforehand. So can you just say a little bit about where the inspiration for An American Marriage came from, and also where those key three characters came from? Who came first? Which came first?
Well, thank you for inviting me here to have this conversation. I'm so delighted to be here with you and with Anne. I wanted to write, An American Marriage is my fourth novel. And my first three novels really were me kind of exploring my own autobiography, my own life and feelings. And for my fourth novel, I thought that it was time for me to look outside of myself. And also, as it's really clear now, but it was clear when I started writing this book that the world was on fire and that we had a serious problem with policing here in the US. And so I wanted to write a novel engaging questions of incarceration, but I didn't know where the story was, because if a novel is going to be any good, it has to be about people and their problems, not problems and their people. So when I was at Harvard doing research on incarceration, I felt like I had a problem, but no people. And I was really stressed out because I had to give a presentation. These people had funded me to do this research, and I just didn't have any art to show for it. But I was in the shopping mall and I overheard a couple arguing. I heard the woman say, she said, "Roy, you know you wouldn't have waited on me for 7 years." And he turned to her and he said, "I don't know what you're talking about. This wouldn't have happened to you in the first place." And I felt that they were both right, because I felt like me, him, and her, like all three of us knew he would not have waited on her for 7 years. We knew this, but he was right too, that his problem would never have happened to her. So this question of reciprocity was moot, but was it? And that I felt was a situation of moral ambiguity. And I think you have a novel when you have a situation where the characters disagree, but they're both right. And so I just started writing from there about a young couple separated by a wrongful conviction and what will happen to their marriage. And I wanted them to seem very much like real people, not symbolic people. I didn't want him to be a stand-in for all that's wrong, for him to be entirely a victim of racism and no longer be a husband in a marriage, a son in a family. So I had to really be sure not to make him symbolic. And the way I did that was adding another male character with a voice too, because it's just like in real life, when you're the only person in the room from your group, you feel like a representative. Like sometimes I'm in a room and I feel there's pressure for me to speak for Black people. And I'm just one Black person. So when I added Roy and Andre, neither one of them was the Black man. They got to each be a Black man. And that's how they got to make so many kind of idiosyncratic choices, which I think made the novel suspenseful for me to write. I did not know what they were going to do.
That's so interesting that you essentially place them in the setting and then set them free to tell the story that they needed to tell.
Yes, yes, mostly. Every now and then I have to nudge them back. Sometimes I'm like, that's just too much. But I was curious as to how I thought real people would behave. And there were times in the writing I was so stressed. I thought someone was going to get killed. I was so worried. I was afraid that there would be a murder and Roy would end up back in prison and the story would not have the hopeful ending that I wanted. And at one point I was stranded 50 pages from the end because I could not find a way forward with hope for the characters. And I was stranded for a year.
A year. Yeah, because it
was like me and the characters were living in New York. Me and the book were living in New York, and we were in a relationship, and we had broken up, but we couldn't afford to move out. So I felt like the book was sleeping on my couch. It wasn't speaking to me. I wasn't speaking to it. I couldn't bring a new book home because of this book on my couch. We had to work it out. And then I found the way forward.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm very careful to not give anything away, but I think one of the most extraordinary things, and particularly in the light of everything that's been happening and been visibly happening in the last few weeks and months, is that they are a normal middle-class couple. He's a book sales rep, she's an artist, and they don't expect something like this to happen to them. And if they hadn't had an argument, none of it might have happened. And I think that is what is so incredibly powerful about the novel, is that it's the tiny things that have the huge consequences. So did you have in your mind what the turning point was going to be about his wrongful arrest? Did that come out of your research, or did, as you wrote, the answer show itself to you?
Well, I think I knew all along that he would be released fairly early in the novel, because I was interested in his life and his marriage and not so much interested in prison. And I wanted him to be more than a victim of his circumstances. So I needed him to get out and get back in the world so that the characters can work things out amongst themselves. Someone once told me when I was working on it, they said, you should put a little more Black Lives Matter in this book. Like, I have some Black Lives Matter here in my purse and I can just, sprinkle it on or crank it on like pepper. But I think that real important thing is that yes, it has Black Lives Matter in it because it's about Black lives, not just Black problems and Black tragedy. He needed to have his Black life, which means he needed to be amongst his family.
Mm. And that's, I think, a really important issue for all of us across the board, is that until each of us as an artist, regardless of what color we are, regardless of where we come from, regardless of anything, can be an artist, not having to speak for all white women who live in Sussex, or white women who own a bookshop, or black women who are professors and are teaching. You know, you both need to be allowed to be artists first and foremost, and the story is king. One of the things that I was really thrilled about was this sense that there was hope. And when they, you know, again, I don't want to spoil it for anybody because it's just the most wonderful, wonderful book to read. So it's really annoying because there's so many things. If we were private, I'd be asking now. But I think that sense that it is possible, redemption is possible. None of what happens is his fault, but equally he's not perfect. But there is redemption, and there is the possibility of love and the possibility of a life after the terrible thing that happens to him. So that clearly was very important to you, to give hope to the characters and to the readers, I suppose.
Well, this is what I imagine. When you write a novel, I imagine that there, just like in music, there's a melody and a harmony. I imagine myself with two audiences. One audience are people who know intimately the experience about which I'm writing. And then the other audience is the people who don't know about this, but need to know. And when I'm writing, I have to make a decision who is king in my mind, like which audience I'm playing to, which is the melody and which is the harmony. And I imagine that my melody, my A track of readers are the people who know this experience. And I do not want someone living with this to walk away from my novel feeling worse than they did when they started. So even though if I were to make the ending not hopeful and just pile on all the bad things you can think of happening, for this audience that doesn't know about wrongful imprisonment, it could leave them, you know, more struck by the brutality of the system. But I would be doing that at the expense of the people who are struggling with this, who want to find a way forward. So you sometimes just have to. There was a lot in my research. This book could have been much darker, but I just decided that I would walk toward the light, if you will, because I want someone to read this book and say, I'm not alone. There is hope for me. There is redemption.
And with, I mean, you have Silver Sparrow out at the moment, and that's doing wonderfully, and it's a beautiful book also. There's a tiny part of me as a reader, I would love to hear the continuation of Roy's story. I would like to hear if his, marriage relationship works out, and whether all the things that are going on with Celestial and Andre, whether they all work out. Is there any part of you that is tempted to take those narratives on?
No, for me, I think that, characters have to have a lot of problems to be able to have another book. Right? Like Roy was wrongfully imprisoned as a newlywed. That's a huge problem. And that's enough to carry a book. Now I feel like all the characters are in a good place. I feel they have little problems, but they don't have book worthy problems. They just have they have the kinds of problems Celestial and Roy had before he went to prison, everyday problems. So don't worry about it.
The wonderful British novelist, Joanna Trollope, who chaired the Women's Prize for me one year, she described it really beautifully when someone had asked her about continuing characters. And she said that for her, it was like being a novelist was like standing on the platform of at a railway station, and the train comes into the station. She gets into the carriage and sits with a group of people, her characters, for a duration of that journey. And then she gets off the train and the train goes on without her. So that their lives are intertwined just for the moment they're intertwined. And actually, I wonder, maybe Anne, if you unmute yourself as well, I wonder if sometimes characters live longer in readers' minds than they do in your minds as writers, because you're moving on to the next thing. Do you think that's maybe true, Tayari?
I absolutely do. I'm sorry. I think that the point at which a reader has enough information to own those characters and imagine their lives going forward is the moment that I back out.
Well, I feel like, for example, An American Marriage took me 6 years to write it. So I feel that the characters were with me for 6 years. I don't know if they're going to stay with other people that long, but I can call up all the characters in my book. You can ask me about any of them and I remember it. I feel like they're someone, almost like the characters are like someone I went to university with. and I knew them. I haven't seen them in a long time, but like with Silver Sparrow coming out in the UK, almost 10 years after it came out in the US, I picked the book up to talk to someone about it. And I felt like, oh, I felt like the characters, it's you. And we hugged and we picked up where we left off. I guess I got back on the train.
You got back on the train. And that's not how you feel, is it, Anne?
No, I don't think that we've ever gotten back together again. Me and my characters. I mean, I love them when I'm with them and I wish them well, but I always feel like I am a turtle laying her eggs in the sand and then crawling along the beach. And when the mother turtle runs into those turtles 10 years later, I don't think she knows that those are her turtles.
Yeah, and
you're giving me such a look. Do you think that she knows that those are her turtles?
Mama turtle knows her baby turtles.
It's a higher quality of literary debate here.
I should mute myself again.
No, don't mute yourself again. One of the things that to have two previous winners here, it's just such a pleasure for everybody listening. And I can see lots of amazing comments coming up about both your writing, but also the way that you're able to explain the process to readers and to other writers listening. For both of you, obviously, it was a great honor for us that you were winners of the prize, and you've both been very generous about the prize. I just wanted to say a couple of things, ask you a couple of things. You know, at the moment, it's a pretty ugly world at the moment. There are all sorts of pressures. And I don't know the experiences that you have been having in Nashville and Atlanta in lockdown. But I just wondered if both of you could say something about whether the outside world and lockdown, if you have been in it, because I know in America it's been slightly different and we never quite know what's true that we're getting reported from over there. Has that been something that has been stimulating to your creative self, or have you found it inhibiting looking outside the window at all the stuff's going on?
Take it away, Anne.
Oh no, look, I'm pointing at you in my box.
That's great. You see, I'm in the middle box, but we're all in different bits of boxes. So Tayari, maybe.
Well, I'll say this. It has been very difficult for me to write fiction during this time because, one, I'm working on a novel, but it's set about 2 years ago. And whenever the characters like touch each other, I'm terrified for them because my mind is in this new world where we do social distancing, where there's such peril, where the book feels almost like an antique to me. A relic from a gentler time, even though the subject matter is not gentle at all, but because the people are not facing a global pandemic and incredible civic unrest, it's hard for me to get into the world of the novel. So for the first time, I've been writing nonfiction.
Interesting.
I don't like it. It doesn't like me, but it feels urgent and necessary to write about the complexities of this moment, like what it is to look at this health crisis, to look at this police violence. The nonfiction is much more heartbreaking even than the novel An American Marriage, because as a novelist, I can create hope and put it in the story. But right now, I don't know where we're going. And that uncertainty it's really stressing me out.
Yeah, really inhibiting. And Anne, I mean, you have written 3 books of nonfiction, not least of all the wonderful This Is a Story of a Happy Marriage, which is a beautiful piece of nonfiction. Have you had a similar experience to Tayari, or have you been able to protect the carapace of fiction for yourself?
I have had a similar experience, and I would like to say the best thing that I have been writing during this time, and the best thing that I've been reading during this time, is that Tayari and I write letters to each other once a week.
Do you?
Yes.
Now that is why everybody's tuned in for this talk in particular. Now we know.
So great. It's so great. It's just like a little card every week, and it has been, Tayari, I love you. It's been such a lifeline. It's been such this little bright spot that I hold on to. And every time I get your letter, I sit down and I write your letter. I feel like I'm in camp and you're my pen pal or something.
Although you resisted it at first. I remember I wrote you the first time, you wrote back and said, "Is this where we are? Handwriting, question mark?"
Look, I think
we
going
also
back to
live,
things,
we live really close. We live like 3 hours apart. So I keep saying, you know, get in your car. I'll get in my car. We could get together.
Writing letters just really calms me. I don't feel so alone in the world. And when you have a pen pal that is a friend, you can write what you're really thinking. Like when I write to Anne, I don't feel pressure to make sure I send her a happy letter. I only feel pressure to write it on pretty paper, but I feel that I can say whatever the thing is that I'm feeling. And I don't keep carbons. I don't write letters with one eye to my archives or anything like that. I just write the letter because the letter serves three functions. One, you know, it gives Anne whatever information I want to share. Secondly, it gives Anne the gift of the gesture that I did it. And third, the letter serves itself as an artifact. It's a physical gift from me to her.
yeah. And sorry.
Also, I really feel like when I get a letter from you, I know what is going on with you in the moment that you wrote the letter. And I know that the hour before and the hour after, it could be something else entirely. So if you write and you say, I'm really down, this is really a hard day, I don't worry about you. I don't feel like, oh, you're crashing. You don't
worry about me.
It's so immediate.
I won't be worried about. I'm delicate.
Oh, sweetheart, I'll worry about you.
You're
so confident.
You know, before I go to the audience questions, because we've got some great questions coming in. Firstly, I love the idea that there's suddenly going to be an explosion of letter writing between, particularly between writers, but possibly writers and readers. And it will be the pen pal thing that has been started by you two on Zoom on behalf of the Women's Prize in the 25th year. I think this is fantastic. But how did you become friends in the first place? Was this because you went to read in Anne's bookshop, or you were, you know, I think people would love to know that, how you became friends.
How did this happen, Anne?
Can you remember?
I do remember. It was, you were, American Marriage was our first editions pick at the bookstore.
Is it that recent?
So, yeah. Oh, well, no, we had met when Silver Sparrow came out, but we didn't pick up a friendship. So when you came back for American Marriage, we knew each other. We had just met. But then you signed books for hours and hours and hours and hours.
It was like 900 books or something.
It was like 800 books. And we realized that we had a lot of friends in common. And I don't know, I just really liked you.
You took me up under your wing because this was my, American Marriage was my book that kind of broke out, and it put me into a whole different kind of professional space. And Anne took me under her wing. You wrote me all these encouraging, this is back when we were still digital, sent me these emails when I was on the road, and really helped me stay sane.
Yeah.
Or as sane as I do. Sane.
You used to write me every time you were on a plane. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Like,
do we remember planes?
To me from airplanes.
Well, you know, the thing, I mean, this is a very beautiful thing, because of course the whole point is for all of us as women to stand shoulder to shoulder with other women and put our energy into supporting each other. And that you are now the poster girls of this, I'm afraid. So, you know, I'm gonna take a few of the audience questions because we're super speeding through our time. It's just, you know, we could be here for many days. So there's a question from John Kenyon who says, for both of you, what did your time in Iowa City at the Writers' Workshop and otherwise mean for your writing? Just, you know, little answers about what that process is.
Nothing.
Yeah, go first, Dan.
Nothing. It meant nothing.
Nothing.
How about you?
I wasn't in the Writers' Workshop. I was in a PhD program in literature. I didn't even know there was a Writers' Workshop. And there were all these people, and they were like, we're writers. And I said, oh, I'm a writer. And they were like, no, not like we're writers. And that is when I found out there was a Writers' Workshop, because I found
that's interesting. Yeah.
Okay, next question. Obviously, neither one of us.
Well, but I think this is also quite good, because I think sometimes it means that, you know, one of the things, we have a new program for the Women's Prize we've just launched called Discoveries, which is about trying to get round the fact that many people, particularly white middle class writers, have an into publishing. They know how to do it. They know about where to go to find agency. They know about writing courses. And part of the idea of Discoveries is to try to share that knowledge and mentor people to get a wider range of women feeling that they have the right to tell their stories for themselves. And I think some of the things about writing classes are that, you know, they can be quite snooty. And, you know, it's like, we're the real writers and who are these people over there? So I think that is a brilliant answer. So it's a question from Claire, who is actually part of the Women's Prize. Hello, Claire, doing a brilliant job with our fundraising and sponsorship, apart from anything else. And she says, how does Anne balance her time with the bookshop? And does your interactions with readers in your own bookshop or online influence your writing? Or I'd add to that, does it drain you or give you a boost?
The bookshop is only a joy, and I don't work there. I'm the only person, you know, in the whole thing that doesn't have a salary. I am not on the schedule. I have certainly worked more at the bookstore since the pandemic than I ever have before, because we're not open, customers aren't coming in, we're shipping. My sister works there. And so I'll go over and work late at night with my sister. But it's only been a good thing in my life. It doesn't take anything away. Because I don't have a primary responsibility, I can always say, you know what, guys, I'm working on something. I'm not coming in this week.
Yeah. Tayari, I mean, just to follow on from that, you have a very busy writing, teaching schedule. You're the A.D. White Professor at Large at Cornell and Professor of Creative Writing at Emory. How do you balance your teaching with your own writing, and so that you don't kind of give all your creative energy away by mentoring and teaching other people?
Actually, I find the teaching helps my writing because it keeps me always talking about writing. I talk about writing to someone every day. I think it's just a matter of thinking about, I often tell people they think they can't write their book because they don't have time to write every day. And that's something we tell people. A writer writes every day, but it's very discouraging to people who work, who have children, who are taking care of older people. It makes them think that they can never be a writer. But instead, what I try to do is I look at all the things that keep me busy and think of ways that these things can enrich my writing so that it's a plus, not a detraction. And that is what helps me. And I love my students. I love those kids. They cheer me up and they keep me honest.
Keep you honest. Right, Ellie Sorrell, or Sorrell, sorry Ellie if I'm pronouncing it wrong. She says that she enjoys reading memoir and wonders if either of you enjoy memoir, and if so, is there a particular memoir you'd recommend? I know it's really hard.
I can really, really love, I'll tell you a memoir that I just read that I thought was one of the best books I've read this year. And I very well may get the title in the wrong order, but it's The Dragon, the Giants, the Women by Waitu Moore. And it is so good. It's a memoir, but it's really structured like a novel. And she is 5 or 6 years old in Liberia during the revolution, and her mom has gone to the States and her father takes them to save them, she and her sisters. And then they come to the States, and sort of what happens in her life and how she processes the information of what happened to her as a child. It is such a spectacular book.
Well, we will. Yeah.
What? Okay, I can never remember the order, but I think it is the Dragons, the Giant, the Women, or it's the other way around.
I tell you what we're going to do, guys, is
Waitu Moore
is very sweetly going to sort of.
Thank you very much. Here it is: the Dragons, the Giant, the Women.
Lovely. Thank you very much from Lucy for saying that. So Vika Santillan, I'm so sorry about getting everybody's names scrambled. I'm usually introduced as Kate Mosse, and since my nickname is Bossy Mosse, this always seems highly appropriate. Asks, what would be your advice, words of wisdom for those who are new to writing fiction?
I would say this is the thing that has helped me the most when my writing isn't going well, is that when my writing isn't going well, I set a schedule and I set a small reachable goal. I have a little timer that sits on my desk and I say to myself, I say, self, sit here for 1 hour, write something. It may not be good, it may not be bad. I can't control that, but I can control how hard I try. And then the pages slowly accumulate. And then once that engine gets going, I don't have to set a date because I want to write all the time. When the writing's going well, I could write like on my arm. But when it's not going well, it's when I rely on rituals and habits. And everyone has those down times and you just have to write your way through them.
Yeah.
100% agree. Couldn't say it better.
The piece of advice I always say to people is that, you know, don't think or don't have your eyes up on the horizon. Have it down on your page or your screen, because in the end it's one word followed by another word and then you've got a sentence, and then one sentence followed by another sentence, and then you have a paragraph, and before you know it you have something to work with. But if you think of the whole thing straight off, it's just too much, you know, so it's just a word after a word after a word. It's that. There's another question from Crystal Apaya, and she says, as writers, what was the turning point that made you feel like you could make it? And what was the best piece of advice someone has shared with you?
I thought that piece of advice that Tayari just gave, that might be,
Yeah,
that might be the best piece.
That's now at the top of your list.
Also, Liz Gilbert has a book called Big Magic, and she has a great tip in there in which she says, if you think you don't have time to write, you've got a job and you've got kids and you've got all of these things going on. She said, if you were having an affair, you'd have time. And I love that. She's like, you would find 15 minutes to meet that person in a stairwell. Your writing should be like that affair. Like you're gonna just steal a few minutes away from the rest of your life because you're gonna be so on fire for it. And just that makes me so happy whenever I think about it. You know, my work is my true love and my secret identity. And I'm gonna find a few minutes and we're gonna slip away.
I think that works sometimes. I mean, I have to say, writing a novel sometimes feels like an affair, and sometimes it feels like you've been married to this book forever.
Oh, no. Yeah, I'm just like, as a way of getting things started, that it's a cute thought.
It is a cute thought, but I think, like, when did I know that I had made it? I can tell you when I knew that I could be a writer. And it was when I wrote a novel in my early 20s, and it was a dog of a novel. I wrote it on a new invention. It was called a laptop computer because you could put it on your lap. And it cost me a lot of money. I had to save for it. And it weighed 11 pounds, and everyone was so impressed that it was so small and light. But I wrote a novel and it was a dog. I mean, I would write it and then it wasn't enough pages to really be a novel. And so I would write some more pages from someone else's point of view, but I finished it and I knew it wasn't good. But I said to myself, I wrote this book. It is a book. It's not good, but I can write another one and it might be better. I could write another one and maybe it would be better until I wrote one that was good enough. So it was just when I wrote those words, the end, on that dog of a novel, that's when I knew in my heart. No one else around me knew. No one believed that I would be a writer before I was a writer. I wasn't that one that everyone had their eye on, but I had my eye on myself.
That's a lovely way of putting it. A great question from Pauline Crowell says, how do you feel about translations and how do you engage with your translators? Because you're both translated into other languages and you both are beautiful stylists where the melody and rhythm and cadence of your work is part of the work. So what do you feel about translations, and do you work with your translators?
The only translator who ever asks me any questions is my translator in the Netherlands. The rest of them seem to just go on fine without me. And what I always think is I must have an astonishing translator in Poland, because Poland is the country where my books really sell. Everything I've written has been translated into Polish, and I'm big in Poland. And you know, what's the explanation? The translator must be a genius.
It's very interesting. Tayari, what about you?
My translators ask me a lot of questions because I think I have a lot of this Southern Black idiom in my work. And it tickles me sometimes to see these little expressions and words completely out of context. And someone is like, what is that? But you just have to have a certain faith in the translations. The most fun thing for me, which is not actually the text of the book, is to see all of the different covers, because that tells you something about the way the book is being presented. I love the UK cover.
It's a great cover.
Isn't that beautiful?
Jamila Okubu is her name, who designed this, but I like it so much better than the American cover because it seems not to be afraid to show you who the book is about.
Yeah, and particularly at the moment, we are in an extraordinary moment in British publishing, with records being broken all of the time, with Reni Odo-Lodge at the top of the chart, a Black British woman for the first time ever, with Bernardine Evaristo has been at the top of the paperback chart. And it's very interesting watching the stereotypical jackets being chucked away and people saying this book is about this and it's great and you should read it. So, you know, I think that's wonderful that you pick on the jacket. Now, we're almost out of time, but I think this is a really lovely one from Alison Farmer, who says, for both of you, what literary event, and I love this, if any, do you most look forward to doing when you're out of quarantine, when the lockdown's over? Seeing each other by the sounds of things, but you know, what are you missing about your literary life? Do you go to other people's events? Do you enjoy doing events?
I own a bookstore.
I know you own a bookstore, but you've already told us your sister's doing it. So, you know, you've let that cat out of the bag. No, but in terms of the things that you're missing, I suppose, really is the question. You know, the things in your away from your desk life that nourish you, that you are particularly looking forward to when this is over.
Meeting new readers and new people. I had to cancel my UK tour. I had to cancel that. I was so looking forward to coming to the Women's Prize because last year I was so nervous I couldn't participate. I didn't get to dance. I was being interviewed and I was going to go to the Women's Prize this year and I was going to just meet everyone and socialize and just be around all those women writers and readers of women's work. I have to say that I've had a hard time managing the disappointment of the last few months and having to just kind of be within myself. I've started keeping orchids because I used to throw orchids away when they stopped blooming. And then it occurred to me that it's not fair to throw them away because they don't bloom all the time. They're still a plant that deserves sunlight and water. And so I'm trying to do that for myself, that I feel like my life is not blooming, but I'm going to tend it anyway.
Anne, have you got anything to add? Your memories of the Women's Prize, maybe?
Oh, my memory.
You remember your night?
That was such a spectacular night. What I remember more than anything was Annie Burns had painted each of her toenails a different color. That was fabulous. And we were all, you know, you're together for so many days before the big night. And we were in the back and Sarah Waters and I said, let's make an agreement that whoever wins, we all split the money equally. And everybody said, no way. And Sarah and I were like, okay, we're in.
We're in.
But it was a really, really beautiful night. It was also fun because I had lost. So I had gone through that experience of standing around with a giant bouquet of flowers and everybody coming up and saying, so sorry.
I know.
It's just embarrassing. And then to win, I was like, oh, this is really great because I lost and now I won.
It was wonderful. It was just...
Kamala Shamsi, who won a couple of years ago for Home Fire, her speech was, she was the year before you, Tayari, and her speech, she had been shortlisted several times, and she said, I was shortlisted when it was the Orange Prize, I was shortlisted when it was the Bailey's Prize, and that's the same for you. And now it's the Women's Prize, and I thought that was wonderful. I mean, you're both very generous, but one of the aims about setting up the prize was, although there is an element of circus, there has to be, in terms of being one winner, and all of the the razzmatazz that goes with that. That was partly about making sure that women's words were honoured and celebrated at the highest level, because often what happens is that women's work is kind of pushed over, you know, it's not as seen as important. The other thing that was really important was the idea that trying to create a community with all of the fellow shortlistees, so that even though there is one winner on the night, there is a sense of these women are the women we should read. And on which point, because I've got so many questions and I have only got through about a third of them, I'm afraid, so forgive me to all of you who ask questions. They've been coming through thick and fast. The 2020 shortlist is still available. And so when you have bought Tayari's books and Anne's books from an independent bookseller, obviously, in Independent Booksellers Week, the Women's Prize for Fiction shortlist is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell, Girl, Woman, Other by Bernadine Evaristo, 1,000 Ships by Natalie Haynes, Dominicana by Angie Cruz, The Mirror and the Light by Hilary Mantel, and Weather by Jenny Offal. And we will be announcing the winner on the 9th of September, the 25th winner of the Women's Prize for Fiction. The Reading Women campaign, which this is part of, is a global book club, if you like, to support all of the amazing winners that have gone before and to keep the conversation going. If you want to join in, there is a Reading Women hashtag and you can vote on the website. But the aim really is to keep amazing books in the public gaze, because it's not just about when a book comes out, it's the fact that the value and the joy and the beauty of that book should sing for the rest of time. This is what we want. So go onto the website and join in. And there is a podcast where different women talk about the books that they have been reading, the winners they've been reading. And it is very exciting to hear a younger generation, particularly, talking about some of our earliest winners, right from Helen Dunmore, the late Helen Dunmore, who was our very first winner. I'm not sure whether I'm handing back to Sandy or not. And if I am handing back to you, Sandy, then you can say the thank yous. But the one thing I would particularly like to say, and you've been watching, it's a really big pleasure to have had Claire Edwards here, our BSL interpreter. It's incredibly important that every woman who wants to engage with the prize can do so. And we really want to use technology to make sure as many women can engage with the prize in these incredible books as possible. Now, Sandy looks like she's unmuted. So I think Sandy might be about to leap back in to say the thank yous. Are you going to do that, Sandy? You are. You're going to do that. And before Sandy does that, I mentioned Discoveries, our new writing program. But if you would like to support the work the Women's Prize does, and particularly we're now a charity, just again, go on the website. The more the merrier. And the more we can listen to other people, the more people get involved in the Women's Prize community, the stronger the prize will be to make sure that women's voices continue to stay center stage. So I will say a huge thank you to Tayari and Anne. You've been so generous and open. I wish we could all now go and have a glass of champagne together. But next year, my dears, we will do so. We will bring our Bessies. So handing back now to Sandy Mahal to finish the event.
Thank you so much. I haven't stopped smiling. I am just beaming for the last hour. Thank you, Anne, Kate, and Tayari, for an inspiring discussion and for sharing with us your unique stories and insight. I think the books we discover through the Women's Prize for Fiction say something about the world we live in, and I think that sends a profoundly important message about the Women's Prize for Fiction. It's a display of all the things we care about, and that is why they are worth reading. So please, everybody, explore all the authors' books and this year's shortlist and all the previous winners, and celebrate women's voices. Now, we would love your feedback. So for our exciting giveaway and your chance to win a set of all 24 previous winners of the Women's Prize for Fiction, please could you complete the feedback form? You'll find the link to it in the chat room. I think Alex is just posting that up now. It will only take a few minutes, and then tap in your email address and we'll pick a random winner and announce them on our social media channels. And I've got to just say a few thank yous. Massive thanks to Claire Edwards for the sign language interpretation today, and to Claire Shanahan at the Women's Prize Trust for her support and organisation, to Pippa and Ross at Five Leaves Bookshop for keeping our communities reading during this time, to John at Iowa City of Literature, and to Arts Council England, our brilliant funder, and to all of you for coming and for sharing your comments and questions. We're back next Thursday, 2nd of July, celebrating Irish women writers Emily Pine and Christine Dwyer Hickey in partnership with Dublin UNESCO City of Literature. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care and see you next time. Goodbye.